Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Armor of Truth Live number 332. Once I'm elected, I will be a vegetarian, said the fox to the hen house. Well, necessity is the cry of tyrants. When they need enemies, they create enemies. And lately we've seen attacks through lawfare, calling you a racist, calling you a misogynist. And this week we've got several things we want to handle for you. Is that our? Yeah, that's it. One of the things we want to cover this week, not tonight, because tonight we've got something that's, well, was it staged? Was it real? We'll do that in a minute. But we want to talk to you later this week about what do you do when somebody that you love, somebody that you care about, has fallen into the Marxist hole, or has bought into the narrative of the left. They believe that Kamala Harris is really it's just so much better than what we had before. This is going to be good because they're really working hard to change her image throughout the media. And Summer, welcome to the show, Summer. She's back with us, folks.
Greetings.
Yeah, there we go. There she is.
Nice to be back.
Do you want to just briefly explain kind of what happened without going into much detail? Just about you've got someone that you care about who was
yes
who it's difficult to talk to right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I experienced something that Brad and I were talking about, which I'm sure that many of us around the country and around the world have gone through and are going through, just how divisive the politics are, particularly right now in this moment in America. One of my lifelong friends since I was 12 years old has really been like a brother to me and been there in the most key moments and throughout my life. We had a really heated disagreement because he's subscribing to everything that the MSM feeds him, and he's just really on board with that. And I was trying to figure out some way to reach him or deconstruct what his thinking was, help him, and it just wasn't happening. And it was extremely emotional for me. I broke down in tears and really had to mourn because, the deception is so real and people are so divided. And so Brad and I just thought, okay, we're going to give this some thought and some prayer and some application to help people out there. So we want to go into that, like how you can bridge that gap or how you can handle that situation in a way that's God honoring and has the light of Christ within you represented.
How do you? It's good. It's difficult because I watched Summer go through it, and it was heartbreaking to me to watch. And I'm sure since we experienced that, and I saw it happening in front of me, some of you out there are experiencing this. Some of you out there have someone in your family, a friend, a loved one that is suddenly challenging you. They don't. They think you're a racist. They think you're a misogynist or whatever. And you might not even care one way or the other about left or right or Republican or Democrat, but because you're not with them, that's how that system works. We want to help you understand how to talk to those people that we care about. But today, we're going to do something different. Today, we're going to talk about the Trump psyop. Was this thing staged or not? But this is going to be a Christian perspective. We'll see what happens. We'll see if you like this. Because I want you to come away from this edified. I think we should start out with this video from someone on Substack who is actually using one of the Tim Truth's videos. And it's called 9 Signs Trump's Assassination Was Faked. And it's a pretty long piece here that's got quite a few points. They show some of the official narrative points, some of the symbols that were involved, and the argument, the myth, right? That this is that the Christians have all jumped behind this because it fulfills a prophecy. Let's go ahead and listen to this. This is going to be a few minutes long, and this is Tim Truth. Here we go.
Take a look at that chart. Take a look at the arrow on the bottom. See the big red arrow, right?
Hey everybody, so my last video on this topic blew up and I needed to make a follow-up video. I want to make this very brief. There are a few things that make this very clearly staged, in my opinion. The first thing is that there's no blood on Trump's right hand. Can you imagine if you got shot in the ear while you were grandstanding at a political rally? And you're telling me that Trump's not going to grab his ear with his hand? We see him grab his ear in the initial moments, yet there's no blood on his hand. The second thing that tells me this is staged is how deliberately his right ear is blocked from view until he gets back up and shows the whole world his bloodied ear. I don't find this plausible, but it makes a ton of sense when you think about camera angles, stage magic, and where he was supposed to have been shot. It would have been too hard to fake this on the live feed. His ear getting shot. All the movement involved, the blood involved. So the executive decision, it seems, was made to have that off camera. And also, as far as this misdirection goes, it seems like they very deliberately started all the clips in such a way that you can't tell that he just directed the audience's attention at the sign over at the right. This is magician-type misdirection, and it's been carefully and deliberately scrubbed from the record. All the clips start with him just moments before he gets shot. No context at all. Saying, and if you want to see something really sad, which could have very well been the cue for the shots to fire off. You want to see something very sad. Somebody in the chat points out, that's neuro-linguistic programming right there. You want to see something really sad? Think about how many people heard that before their favorite idol got the head wound. That's what they believe anyway. Now his excuse is that he's looking to his right and there's a sign over there. And he's indicating the sign over there to the crowd. But to me, this is the perfect cover so that they can buy some time until his ear can be bloodied up. By directing everybody's attention, misdirection, to the sign over at the right, everybody who was filming the event turned their camera to the sign. The media cameras, which were looking straight ahead at Trump, watch very closely how he ducks and covers, very deliberately trying to hide his right ear from the camera. To me, this makes it obvious that this is choreographed ahead of time, and that the point was to not have to fake anything on live video, to not have to fake anything from the front, because they would have to fake it moving, becoming bloody, etc., etc. So I think the plan was, Trump, you look to the right, shots are going to go off, grab your ear, and then fall to the ground. Make sure that your right ear stays blocked from the cameras. And before we shoot the shots, direct everybody's attention, the classic magician's misdirection, to this big chart that we'll put up on the right side. And then the building that the shooter was on will be to the right, so that the angles can be explained away. It's just happenstance that this was all off camera, they'll say.
God, I don't know if they can do it. Do you guys have access to that chart that I love so much? You don't mind if I go off teleprompter, do you? Because these teleprompters are so damn boring, I try and explain that. Oh, there's it. Wow. You guys are doing it. They're getting better with time. My guys, take a look at that chart. Take a look at the arrow on the bottom. See the big red arrow, right? So that's when I left office. That was the lowest point, and that comes right from the government services, comes right out of Border Patrol. Take a look at that. So that arrow is the lowest amount of illegal immigration ever in recorded history into our country. And then the worst president in the history of our country took over. And look what happened to our country. Probably 20 million people. And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that's sad, take a look at what happened.
So no blood on the hands. The right ear, which is the ear that was ultimately shot, apparently, was completely turned away from the main cameras. And everybody's attention was drawn away to that chart, minimizing the chance of any amateur footage. The third thing is the lack of concern about first aid or security post-shooting. There was no compression being done to his ear. He apparently didn't even touch his ear with his hand. There was no attempt to do compression. There was no attempt to bandage it or anything. He just walks out, and it's a very stark contrast in the initial moments. In the initial moments, they went way out of their way to hide his right ear. Misdirection, turning to the side. Even when he's falling to the ground, he's turned to the side, making sure to hide that right ear. He doesn't look around. He falls down, keeping that right ear hidden. I believe this was choreographed. Also, I believe if Trump was in live fire and had been shot in the head, he wouldn't have acted like that. He would have made a beeline for the door. He would have ducked his head down. The Secret Service would not have acted the way that they did. They would have shuffled him out of there. So the behavior after the shot doesn't make any sense, but it was great for the photo ops and great for the ultimate operation here, which is to make Trump look like a hero. But again, I think that the bloodied ear really was the jump the shark moment here. They wanted to sell this assassination as real so badly that they made the executive decision that he had to sustain damage to his head. To me, the angles here don't make any sense. The motive is too clear. This isn't even so much about Trump, who does stand to gain a lot from this. This is about the world stage, of which Trump is a key player. The last thing I want to bring up here is the damage sustained to his ear. I think this is the best shot of it, the moment he's getting into the limo at the end. First of all, it's not continuing to bleed. The bleeding apparently magically stopped as soon as he got up. Also, the blood doesn't seem to act like real human blood. I think any of us who've been cut can look at this ear and see that blood doesn't work like this. I think they had some liquid blood that they squirted, and you can see it dripping down in 3 directions. One is down into the ear, the second is across his face, and the third is a little bit lower across his face. But the key trick here, as far as the blood goes, is the putty-like goo blood that they put around the exterior of the top of his ear. I think the idea here was to make it look like a serious wound that was bleeding profusely. And if you just squirt a bunch of liquid blood, you run the risk of it coming off and showing that there's no real wound there. I think this is another reason why Trump has no blood on his hand, because he didn't want to mess up the fake blood movie magic. You don't want all the blood to come off and people to see that you weren't actually shot. Also, I'm amazed at the level of sellouts in the so-called alternative media who have no skepticism and just believe whatever they're shown. Really pathetic. But it really doesn't surprise me given that they've been pushing poison on you for years and years and years and years. So thanks for watching. Feel free to download any of my videos, upload them on your channel. I can see that the average person in my audience is seeing through this, and the agents are trying so desperately to gaslight you.
So the average person who watching my videos, I think he said there, you're seeing through this. You're seeing through this because you can see through this. All right. By the way, let me make sure that we're the ones that can see through it. Us, you and me, we can see what other people don't see. Let me make sure that I make it clear here that the video is from Tim Truth. You can see his stuff on BitChute. Well, that's where I see it. That's where I got it from. But the article on Substack is from James Hill, MD. I assume that MD means Dr. James Hill. And Summer found this one. Did you know? How did you come up with this one?
It just came into my feed.
Came into
Substack,
the feed.
yeah.
Got served to us somehow, didn't it?
It did indeed.
Interesting. And I'm glad it did because this gives us an excellent opportunity. The article says the Donald Trump assassination attempt appears to have been staged to increase his popularity. Let's just take the claims one by one. To increase his popularity. Yeah, it would do that, wouldn't it? It would increase his popularity. It would make him a a more compassionate figure to people who don't normally support him. And it actually did that, didn't it? What I want to challenge you with is this. Was anything in the video you just watched objective information that you can really follow up on that demonstrated to you unequivocally that this event was staged? And by staged, what do we mean? We mean that beforehand, well beforehand, all of these things were planned out, as he said, choreographed. Elements of stage magic would be used to fool everyone, to let everyone believe that this had happened. What kind of evidence? Now, in all fairness, of course, as Tim Truth said, he had done a video before this one, and I've watched all the videos he's done on this. I watched them all today. They're all fairly similar, and a lot of them are dealing with things that you've already heard. I just want to challenge you, though. When you come into this video, if you already have the opinion, I think it was staged, and for some reason you need it to be staged, everything you're going to hear there is going to reinforce the fact that, well, okay, yeah, excellent. Now I feel more affirmed in this position that it was staged. But was there really any evidence presented? Or was this an exercise in confirmation of what we already believe to be true? Is this going to sway anybody? Let's break people down into two groups: stagers and believers. People who believe it was staged and people who believe it really happened. Is this analysis going to convince anybody who's a believer? What do you think, Summer? Would this analysis convince someone who, let's just say,
well, if they sow enough doubt, and
let's say it's not a Trump supporter, like it's not somebody who's hardcore behind Trump, but it's just just somebody who's kind of uncommitted one way or the other, and they're watching this. Would this? Do you think this? We didn't talk about this beforehand, so whatever answer you give is fine. Do you think this would persuade somebody who didn't have a dog in the fight?
Well, sure, it could.
All right.
It could.
All right.
What I would say is that we know that the left has admittedly, with their PR strategists, said that, hey, let's say that it's faked. So, I guess some people are saying this is the first time that the supposed right and the supposed left are on the same page, like thinking that it's a faked event. But, you do have that crossover where a lot of the left is out there saying that it's staged. And then you've got...
Because they don't want him to have that.
Yeah.
They don't want him to be a compassionate figure.
But I would suggest that the whole thing is a lot bigger than just this, and we're going to get into that as we go on in the show tonight.
And I think what might be interesting for the people who are watching this video is as we come into this, Summer and I are looking at this thing from a little different perspective, right? We're not completely in agreement on it. Is that fair? I mean, is that fair to say?
Sure.
Yeah, because so just so you know, we're not here saying that we're going to give you a definitive answer on what happened here.
Well, one of the flags that's raised for me is it does seem like YouTube has, for all of the really serious censorship that was going on over the last few years, it seems like lately they've been more slack again. So that tells me, that tells me they want people to talk. They want there to be confusion. This is part of the strategy. This is part of the disruption. And to me, this goes way higher. This is about, making nation states obsolete. It's about telling that story about how you can't trust your institutions. So we're going to flesh that out.
So there seems to be about three opinions on this. There are those who believe everything is as it appears, as you see there if you can see it on the screen at the bottom. There, the comments. It was an inside job. And this is a video that just came out today from behind Trump. I heard someone say before that there's no video from behind Trump. There's some video from behind Trump, but does that matter? Can't the video be faked? Are we not in the age of AI where you can't believe what you see anymore? I mean, and then here's there's this video is,
it's all about plausible deniability. If you just plant that seed of doubt.
This video is from one of the guys who was shot. This is from James Copenhaver. This was from the video that he shot, and obviously he's been in the hospital, so they were letting this one, maybe not in the hospital. Some of you, maybe nobody was shot. Nothing really happened at all. And I remember years ago, like in 2015, when Obama was in office, there were an awful lot of things that happened that were shady. Las Vegas, that was weird. Orlando was weird. After Las Vegas, the thing down in, was it Southern California? Somewhere that bar, that country music bar. Weird. But let's read a little bit of this article here and see what the claims are. Why was it staged? If it was, why was it staged? Let's just check some of these claims out and see where they lead. This one says here that Donald Trump's assassination attempt appears to have been staged to increase his popularity. All right, there's a pretty common claim. Would you have to stage it, though, to do that? Does Donald Trump need to stage an assassination attempt to increase his popularity? Does he really need to do that? Would he really have to? I don't know. You can decide for yourself. But then it says here, and to appear to fulfill prophecy, especially among the 250 million religious Americans who say things like, Trump's missed bullet was a miracle that shows God chose him and wants him elected again.
Yeah, and that just makes Christians look goofy.
That's why I wanted to drill down on that one for just a second, because can we just look at this objectively for a second? Forget about whether or not it's staged. Let's analyze how people are talking about it. So here this guy says, this is done to dupe silly believers who believe in things like prophecy. So it says, among the 250 million religious Americans who say things like, this is a prophecy. So this right here is a link. Let's go to the full screen for you. Right here, this is a link.
I've yet to see anybody who's claiming the biblical perspective to come forward with good scriptures to back up that idea.
Well, no, they can't, because
it's butchering the scriptures.
Everyone who's doing that and claiming this is prophecy unfolding right before your eyes is having to do that outside of Scripture. They're just using the text to make their case rather than going into the text and pulling out the meaning, and it's not how we do it.
That's right.
So the link where it says 250 million religious Americans believe this thing right here, that God chose Trump and wants him elected again, so this is some kind of problem. So you click on that link and it goes here to this Gallup poll website. This article is from it's from earlier this year in March, and how religious are Americans. And I just want to give you an idea of how you have to go through these things. If you're going to spend time in this, and you're going to be honest about it, hold people accountable for what they say. All right, so he's making the claim here that this is one of the reasons why it was. Again, this is not Tim Truth saying this. This is James Hill, Dr. James Hill. So the website presents the results of various demographic surveys from 2023 that Gallup had done about what religious affiliation Americans claim. Now, I don't find on this page anywhere the number 250 million. It's not specifically reported anywhere on here. You might think I'm splitting hairs if that's not important, but hang on, I think it is important. Let's just see, being, assuming the best of the guy and being gracious, see if we can find out what he was talking about. So the population of the United States of America is right now about 336,673,000 or something like that. Very close to that. And so at the top of the article, it says vast majority of Americans have a religious preference, predominantly a Christian one. though that percentage is declining. At the same time, much smaller proportions of Americans say religion is very important to them. So at the top it says here, about 3 in 4 Americans say they identify with a specific religious faith. So is that what he was talking about? 3 in 4 Americans. That would be 252 million. So that's pretty close. Maybe he's just rounding. Let's keep going now. The Gallup poll says, by far the largest proportion, 68%, identify with a Christian religion. That brings it down to 228 million. And let's see. 33% of that 68 million, or 68% would be 33% Protestant, 22% Catholic, 13% loosely Christian. So not all of these people are charismatic, believing the way this. So the 250 million number is, well, it's not very honest. Let's keep going though. 50 years ago in 1973, 87% of U.S. adults identified as Christian. But there's been a shift away from Christian religions to no religion at all. In 1965, 70% of people said they were, let's get it down here. That shows you basically how the graph works. In 1965, 70% of Americans said religion was very important. 13 years later, 1978, that was down to 52% people said religion was very important. And last year, it was all the way down to 45% of Americans say religion is important. So, now, of course, we've documented here the severe decline in the percentage of Americans who claim to be members of a church since 1940. And that nearly 30% drop that occurred between 2020 and 2022. A drop that would have taken 400 years to achieve if it had been going down at the rate it was going for the previous 60 years. Something severe happened. Well, this Gallup poll article doesn't say anything at all about these people's beliefs. It doesn't say anything about what they believe, how many of these people believe in fulfillment of prophecy today, how many believe, certainly according to the assertions made in the post here, the assumption is made that 250 million Christians are all Republicans and likely to believe that Donald Trump was prophetically chosen by God to be saved so he can be elected. That's a massive stretch, to say the least. So we don't know any of that information, but again, the claim is made here. This was done to increase his popularity and to appear to fulfill prophecy for the 250 million religious Americans who believe this way. That's not very honest. Just to make that point.
And we do know that we have to recognize that Christian Zionists would be particularly vulnerable to this.
No doubt. Yeah, for sure, they would be. Yeah, and the New Apostolic Reformation, the Seven Mountain Mandate crew, Pentecostals would definitely be. But there's not 250 million of those. And when you get down into that group of people, not all of them believe that way either. So we're nowhere near 250 million religious Americans who believe this way, just to make that point. And by the way, who's doing this? Like, whose articles are these? Who are the people reporting this to us? Well, this is Dr. James Hill, who I didn't know about until today. So it says, politicians and media have you assume without question Trump narrowly escaped death when a bullet hit his ear. Do they? Do they have you assume without question that Trump narrowly escaped death? Politicians and media. Or are you watching the same video everyone else is watching? Are they having you assume this, or is everybody watching the same video and drawing their own conclusion from it? They force you to focus on Was it the Secret Service failures? Were they negligent? Was it intentional? Are they forcing you? They didn't force this person to focus on that. Or what kind of white domestic terrorist crooks must be so they can advance more anti-white, anti-gun legislation? Okay, maybe. It says, remember, these people lie to you constantly and cannot be trusted. I wouldn't argue with that, right? The media certainly does lie. But the question is, how do you evaluate the evidence that you have? What do you do? Do you listen to Tim Truth? Do you listen to Dr. Hill? What do you do? How do you decide whether this thing was staged or not? It says here, many people have been predicting for years there would be a fake assassination attempt on Trump. Okay, but I don't know. I don't remember people saying there would be a fake assassination attempt on him. Maybe some people have. I remember a lot of people saying that it's pretty likely they're going to try to take him out because, you know, media narrative. He's the bad guy, right? He's the Hitler. So how do we know it's fake? Because if you're a real threat to the establishment and they want to assassinate you, they don't just attempt it, they get it done. So that's why it's fake, because it failed. It's another claim. It's fake because it failed. They don't just attempt. See the fate of true political hero John Magufuli, late president of Tanzania, who told his people COVID was a hoax and warned them not to take the jab. Contrast that to Donald, father of the vaccine, Trump. So, Operation Warp Speed, the guy who brought you Operation Warp Speed, does that mean this was staged? The fact that Trump rolled out the vaccine, does that mean this was staged? Does that follow? Or are they just trying to build a case? The purpose of the fake attempt is so obvious that normies can't see it. Now, when I see a statement like that, my cackles go up. I start, what's really happening here? Are we doing an honest, objective investigation here of the evidence and the weighing the facts? Or are we putting ourselves off over here in a special place where we can see what things other people can't see? Because remember what we heard here at the end. I just want you to be very careful about these things. Because ultimately it doesn't matter one way or the other for you and me, if you're a Christian. Listen to this here. Let's one more time.
Also, I'm amazed at the level of sellouts in the so-called alternative media who have no skepticism and just believe whatever they're shown.
Is that what's happening? Is that what's happening? Is that what we are? Are we uncritical, unskeptical people?
Really pathetic.
Are we pathetic?
But it really doesn't surprise me, given that they've been pushing poison on you for years and years and years and years.
Just throw it out there. Unjabbed. Nobody here's been jabbed. I've never even been tested for the stuff. So that doesn't work here. But anyway, we'll keep going.
So thanks for watching. Feel free to download any of my videos, upload them on your channel. I can see that the average person in my audience is seeing through this, and the agents are trying so desperately to gaslight you.
So the average person is seeing through this, and the agent's trying to gaslight you. I don't disagree with that, because it seems like to me that right after this happened, and it apparently failed, it seemed like to me that the narrative immediately, at first, do you remember, Summer?
Yeah, they were trying to downplay it, saying that it was an incident.
The day it happened, he fell down. He just fell down, right? He just fell down, and some firecrackers went off, and as soon as they could tell that, something happened. He's bleeding there. It looks like something might have happened. The narrative suddenly started to shift. At first it was, we've got to say something kind. And then immediately, the next day, this was staged, it's obviously fake, coming out of the left. And the obfuscation, the FBI. You heard Christopher Wray last week or earlier this week being interviewed in a hearing, saying that, we're not even sure he was shot. It could have been shrapnel, knowing that they had already stated that it had happened. That is narrative control. That's injecting doubt. Summer's going to talk about this more in just a minute, about injecting doubt into this thing. Why would they do that? right? If they wanted, if this was a staged event and they wanted to do this to boost his popularity, wouldn't they go along with it? Wouldn't it? And again, that's speculation. I don't think there's very much fruit in doing that at all. But the point here was, did you hear what he said? We can all see this. And it says down here, the normies can't. Right? You don't want to be a normie. Being a normie, that's goofy. You don't want to be a normie. And it's also true that it appears Google has tried to scrub a lot of the, like you can't, well, the other day, anyway, I don't know if it's changed now, but as of Sunday, when you went in and tried to search for Trump assassination, the autocomplete didn't work. So those things were going around too. Conveniently, the shooter is now dead. That happens in absolutely all of these cases, it seems like. And here's a point that we bring up quite a bit. The good thing about events like this is that they're very revealing litmus tests that allow us to identify who's an honest, reliable commentator and who's not. And I couldn't agree more. Anyone high profile taking this attempt seriously and telling us it's proof of just how threatened the establishment Democrats and random 20-year-olds are by Trump is just playing into the performative Punch and Judy political theater. I don't know. It seems like to me for 2 years they've been calling the guy Hitler, and they've been stoking this kind of an action for quite a while now.
Well, he is the Trojan horse, though, for all of us that don't believe and worship the Democratic side.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what QAnon is. Yeah,
and that's a good point. I want to make sure you people understand out there. I'm not here. I'm not coming down on one of these sides. I just want to. Let me just get into what.
Well, it's like the black class and the red class.
Yeah, and the Chinese, the old during Mao's Great Leap Forward, where you select one of the groups is the bad guy, the oppressors that have to be stopped, and the other group is
the oppressed.
But the truth is, they both are equally dirt poor and have nothing. But it's a belief system. And we'll bring you a video from Tan. What's her name? I forgot her name. It's right here. The Chinese lady.
Wonderful interview. Yeah, we posted that in
someone's got it right here.
In one of our newsletters, one of our articles that came out, and also in the community post. You can find it there. And fantastic interview. We really recommend that you check it out.
Yeah, let's drop it in the link. Let's drop it in the description of this video. You need to watch this lady. She grew up in China. And it might help you, give you some perspective on what's happening here around us.
There she is.
Yeah, Lily Tang Williams is her name.
Yeah. She's
running for Congress. And
New Hampshire.
I'm just to submit to you, this is a person who is this is a true American. Anyway, let's get back here for a minute. So it's about the miracle. That's why they did it. They did it for prophecy. The blood's phony. No skin break on Trump's ear. How would you know that? By seeing his ear after the fact, like days later, a week later, week and a half later. Well, this is true, and I agree with this. This definitely was not a miracle, or it wasn't God intervening at all. But it's being said, if you don't see the attempt, if you don't see it this way, if you don't see that it's completely staged, these folks are saying that you're gullible and you're slow because you're still, after all this time, you're still not grasping how the world stage really works. That these events are literally performed on a stage by actors and they're not real. So I just want to submit to you guys. Be careful. Be careful not to oversimplify and to condense issues like this into some single monolithic idea as if the world, or even the United States, can be effectively controlled by one overlord or one group of, one small cabal. There are a lot of moving parts at work. Many extraordinarily wealthy and powerful individuals today, more than ever, and families, bloodlines, who can and do exert influence on the nation and the world. But please understand, their influence is not absolute. The wealthy and influential people of the world are often not in agreement with one another. They often do battle for supremacy amongst themselves. And as Christians, we know, right? We know who's in control, right? We know that God is sovereign. He's decreed everything that we see happening right now. These individuals position themselves as having, when I say these individuals, I'm talking about the influencers who make it their duty to congratulate you for seeing through the lies. I mean, all of the lies. Having the unique ability to perceive things that the rest of the world can't perceive. They assume a kind of omniscience. But what power do they have? Is it indisputable? Or I'm just going to say, let's make sure you understand. It is indisputable that the powerful, the elites, the globalists, the New World Order, or whatever name you want to give them, the Illuminati, they do engage in deceptive practices. One of them we've just seen recently is the Patriot Front movement, which is an obvious FBI honeypot movement, where they're marching around like this right-wing group who wants to turn the United States into a white European ethno-state. They went to, this group of guys was rounded up, and 22 of them were taken through the court system and convicted, and then the organizer of the group, all charges were dropped. That's the kind of thing where you can see and go, okay, this is obviously an operation. Because the organizer was some kind of informant for the FBI, and he got off scot-free, while 22 guys, were convicted. That's called a honeypot. That's how they attract extreme individuals, they call them, and get them off the streets, or bring them in so they can put them out as informants. But anyway, whether it's to gain power, conceal their misdeeds, or enrich themselves, they do deceive. But this kind of blanket skepticism is irresponsible. At the heart of this is a psychological concept known as confirmation bias. The tendency to search for and interpret and remember information in a way that confirms your pre-existing notions or beliefs. It's powerful. And it's powerful for those who know how to manipulate it. And I'm here to tell you that there are a lot of people out on YouTube and Rumble and BitChute and bloggers who know very well how to manipulate that cognitive bias, who are dialed in to that segment of our population, who are so angry and so aggravated about what they're seeing that they want somebody to make sense of it for them. That's not the left, it's not the right. They know how to manipulate this. They know how to create an echo chamber where they won't be challenged. That's not going to happen here. I want to jump ahead because I was going to save this for last, but I want to give Summer a chance to get into where she's got. So I want to give you a little anecdote here that I pray will help you to understand what is actually happening in the world. I mean, if that's what we want to know, right? Is that why we search these videos and search out people to break down these things for us? Because we want to know what's happening in the world, right? We want to be able to understand it. All right, just a second. I'm scrolling here, so just give me a chance. All right, let me just tell you this right quick because I want to get, Summer's got some good stuff that we need to get to about this same thing, about thinking, about how we, because I would submit to you that if you happen to be one who's looking at this and you're coming into it and you're thinking, well, this is probably staged, and you're hearing this and you're going, yeah, you're doing the same thing that these people, the radical left, are doing. We'll explain that for you in just a minute. And I hope you'll hang around, because 9 out of 10 of you, when you hear that, you're going to leave. You're going to leave the channel. You're going to leave the show. That's okay. We're terrible at YouTube. We're terrible at marketing because we don't do what everybody else is doing. Everybody else is trying to feed you stuff that will make you keep coming back, that will satisfy that part of you, that urge, that reward center in the brain. They're marketing to you. The people that are giving you this story, this blanket skepticism, are marketing to you. Let me just tell you this, though. I want you to understand this about the world. After the flood, God's command to Noah and his descendants was clear. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. That's Genesis 9:1. But the people of Babel chose to defy God and establish a centralized one world order under a singular ruler. They even built a massive city and tower complex as a monument to their greatness. And the tower was specifically so they could avoid God's wrath when it came again. Genesis 11:4. Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. I submit to you that this is something that keeps happening. It's a cycle in the world. You see it in Genesis 6. You see it in Genesis 11. Genesis 6 is before the flood. Genesis 11 is after. But this desire to exalt mankind above God led to their downfall. So their great work was never completed because suddenly they couldn't work together anymore. They couldn't communicate. God confused their language, preventing them from understanding one another and thereby crippling their ability to cooperate in this sinful endeavor. So the people were then scattered across the earth. God's will was done. They were divided into distant and diverse nations, and that fulfilled God's original command in a manner they didn't intend or never expected. They built the tower and patched it up with pitch, the same thing that was used to seal up the ark to make it watertight, because they believed another flood was coming when God told them that wouldn't happen again. So they're unfaithful in many ways. But in this, we learn a fundamental truth about our world right now, about everything that's happening around us right now. When mankind unites in defiance of God's will, those efforts will inevitably be corrupted by sin. Like the psalmist declares in Psalm 33:10, the Lord brings the counsel of the nations to nothing. He frustrates the plans of the peoples. So these efforts to build a global order against the will of God are doomed to fail. But here's the best part. In Acts chapter 2, verses 1 through 12, we learn another timeless and infinitely encouraging truth about our world and about our God. 50 days after Jesus walked out of the tomb, victorious over sin and death, Jerusalem was filled with thousands of people who had traveled from every nation under heaven. Acts 2:5. And they gathered there in Jerusalem to hear the good news. And Acts 2:8 says this, and how is it that we hear each of us in our own native language? So unlike the self-exalting ambition of Babel, these individuals sought to hear and then proclaim the message of Christ. So God blesses and empowers those who cooperate to magnify the name of Jesus. And so, well, in God's grace, He didn't vaporize the Babylonites. Could have. It wasn't another flood. He just dispersed them to create the nations, different languages. But in God's grace and kindness, the curse at Babel was miraculously reversed in Jerusalem when God enabled the apostles to speak in various languages they hadn't spoken before, so that everyone present could understand the gospel in their own tongue. Not only did the miracle of Pentecost facilitate the spread of the gospel, but it also symbolized the unity that comes from submitting to God's will rather than defying it. So the ambition of the great and proud Babylonites, these men of renown, to reach heaven, to build their own global one world order under their own authority and power, led to a curse of confusion, and ultimately their dispersion. But focus here on the confusion. This is what sin leads to. But then the miracle of Pentecost and the mission to proclaim the kingdom of heaven was met with God's grace of understanding and a true unity. Proverbs 69 reminds us that the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. So at Babel, the leaders sought to glorify themselves. God disallowed it. He doesn't disallow it every time, all the time, but eventually and ultimately it will be disallowed. But then at Pentecost, humble men sought to glorify Christ, and God smoothed out their path. Smoothed out the path for their mission. Even making it happen at a place and time when the infrastructure of the Roman Empire was there, laid out, its roads, its language, and its order facilitated the rapid spread of Christianity across the known world. And this principle is encountered throughout Scripture, where God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. James 4:6. Proverbs 21:30 says, "No wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord." So human cooperation can lead to very different outcomes, depending on the purpose. So when people act out of pride, self-exaltation, their plans will be ultimately frustrated. But when our cooperation is aimed at magnifying the name of Christ, God provides everything necessary for that mission to succeed. So I wanted to share this with you because I would hope that this kind of truth, this ultimate truth, would encourage you, would encourage all of us to align our ambitions with God's will and to focus on what's really important here. Where should we really have our attention? What is it we should be thinking about? Let me share a couple more points with you here. I think that I was sharing that with Summer this morning as we had to drive somewhere, and it was a little bit too early for it probably, but it just came this morning, and I was reminded of that, and I thought that's where we need to be. That's where our focus needs to be. Is that their sinful cooperation, their cooperation in some kind of a big plan, it's not going to succeed. It might for a while. Let's see, I'm going to share this with you. But these influencers, they say they have this unique ability to see through these. They don't. They don't have any unique ability. Nothing you heard in that video was anything that you couldn't discern from watching that video. He wasn't there. He didn't say he was there. I'm asking you, what power do they actually have? Many logical fallacies are present here. We won't get into that now, but I just want you to know, we're all prone to overestimate our competence on certain issues, things that go beyond our expertise. Many of the influencers that you watch out here don't have any strong background in complex geopolitical, historical, or social issues, and they might keep that weakness hidden. And they'll talk about issues as if they're more well-versed than they really are. In fact, it's really common for YouTubers and bloggers to present themselves as experts. Experts of what? Of watching videos? And then the readers and viewers of their work, often equally uninformed as many of us are, accept these assertions without question, believing they've accessed a hidden truth that others can't see, and if you can understand, they're doing exactly the same thing that they're trying to expose. And the internet has caused this to proliferate. The anonymity of the internet allows this to go. Discernment requires wisdom, and the Bible describes wisdom as the ability to apply knowledge and understanding in a way that leads to righteous living. I just want to encourage you. What about breaking down the Trump shooting video leads to righteous living? Wisdom involves recognizing the complexity of situations and resisting the temptation to oversimplify and do blanket skepticism. It also involves understanding that human knowledge, yours and mine, is limited, and that God is the only one who sees all things clearly, 1 Corinthians 13:12. Blanket skepticism is not only intellectually lazy, it's also morally irresponsible because it exploits the fears of the people. And we've all been there because the world's crazy. At some time or another, we've been scared and confused. And that makes us vulnerable to individuals who know how to manipulate fear and confusion. And ultimately, all this does is lead us away from critical thinking and into a cult-like dependency on the influencer. So it's with love and a deep concern for all of you that I would encourage you to take a closer look. Not at this, but at yourself. What are their fruits? Are there any fruits? How do we determine if somebody is working according to the flesh or even working by the direction of another spirit? Where are these people leading you? What's the value of works of the flesh? Enmity, strife, anger, rivalries, dissension, and division. Are these messages leading you to the light, or are they leading you to the false light? This is very serious. And so I just think it's important to point this out here because we haven't talked about this yet. These influencers, these YouTubers and people who make the videos about these, they can be very convincing. They can even be charming. But the natural heart of man loves to hear new things and to be entertained by vain philosophies. We see this again in Acts chapter 17. Paul describes the Athenians as spending their time on nothing except telling or hearing something new. Colossians 2:8, Paul warns against being taken captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition. The point here is that we expect those who have not been renewed by the presence and fellowship of the Holy Spirit to naturally gravitate toward ideas that are novel and exciting, even if they're ultimately hollow and deceptive. But understand, this natural inclination that we all have works against all of us and can lead us, it can even lead Christians away from the truth and toward teachings that satisfy these superficial urges, but do not nourish the soul. So the Lord's exhorted us to be aware of this shortcoming in us, this part of our fallen nature, this tendency within ourselves to actively redirect ourselves. The Lord's exhorted us to actively redirect ourselves away from novelty and superficial wisdom and toward deep and enduring truth. 2 Corinthians 10:5 says, "We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and we take every thought captive to obey Christ." That's how you engage in spiritual warfare. Not through physical means, not through new and ever-changing information and stories, what's the hottest take, but by using truth to dismantle false ideologies and useless philosophies that lead people away from peace with God. Refute error and build up the body of Christ. In addition to the Great Commission, that's our duty. It's simple. The Lord would have us actively engage carefully in examining and deconstructing arguments that are raised against the knowledge of God. And this certainly applies to critiquing online influencers who promote lofty opinions. And whether it's intentional or not, much of the time they undermine trust and they stoke fear and they lead people. They lead you and me away from a sober, Christ-centered understanding of how the world works. And so, Summer, I mentioned there a couple times the false light. Mm-hmm. So now I want to let's see, we're right at 1 hour, but let's just.
Yeah, I mean, we could come back and do it tomorrow if you'd like, if you feel like you want to cut it.
It's up to you. What do you think?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty strong finish, what you've just done. But,
Okay.
you know,
All right.
the part that I wanted to talk about it is because our prayer is that this vantage point that we're going to present to you might be another way to come to terms with what we're being hit with as a culture, as a society right now, to give you guys a bit of a insight into some of the strategies on how the enemy works, what tactics we see at play that we feel that we can trace in the culture that's happening right now, so that would help possibly, you know, like a bridge to these divisions that are happening amongst us between our families and between our friends, because we need to understand how this system is being weaponized against us. And obviously, we're in good company here. You guys are very well aware of it. But yeah, we just wanted to give more of like an 80,000-foot view perspective. So, Brad, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't want you to have to rush through it. And
okay.
And that's probably good if we shorten these shows up and come back every day.
Yeah.
I'm sure the folks who like to watch us would probably appreciate that more.
Sure. Okay. Well, we can just jump into it tomorrow.
All right. Let's finish up with this. There's an Atlantic article. What's the title of that article? Oh, here it is. The Painful Reality of Loving a Conspiracy Theorist. Now, this is, you know, this is a frustrating article because, you know, they talk about people being retreating into a world of right-wing delusions. You know, not everything that's spoken about in QAnon is false, but that's another one of the problems. But so that we'll bring this up next time too, because some of the points that are made in there are interesting. And look, if we do self-reflection, I mean, we have to. It's our call to be self-reflective. Love and truth's about more than tearing down bad arguments. We're commanded to build up one another, be constructive. And Paul gives this advice to us to maintain a spirit of humility. Critiquing other people's a difficult thing to do for a fallen creature whose heart wants to be correct, wants to win the debate. So we have to be self-aware, very careful not to succumb to this tendency we have to be overconfident and prideful in our own understanding, but to be humble servants of Christ, always pointing others to Christ and not to staged or to Trump or whatever, because Christ is the ultimate source of wisdom and truth. And so let's be grounded in the wisdom of Scripture so that we can discern between what's true and what's simply vain philosophy. That's how we become wise. And this is how we remain vigilant and aware of deceptive influences and actual spiritual threats that have us hemmed in on every side, because the days are evil. And even the most well-meaning person can be manipulative. If they just want to have a successful YouTube channel, it requires some manipulation to do that. Ephesians 5 tells us to look carefully how you walk, not as the unwise, but as wise, making the best use of your time, because the days are evil. Why does clickbait work? Because people, YouTubers, bloggers, influencers, are all marketers. They're all pitchmen for something. And your attention is the new commodity. And this will set up for what we're going to talk about next time, which is surveillance capitalism, how Marxism is working in all of this, how Marxism has even affected the truth community. We're thinking like Marxists in a lot of ways. But the point here is your attention is the new commodity. Isn't that right? Your clicks and views are the currency of the new economy. And it's even worse than that, actually. We now live under a system of surveillance capitalism where you're the product. It's entertainment rather than enlightenment. And it's novelty over truth. And anyone who is very successful in this new system knows how to capitalize on this natural inclination we all have to be entertained and reassured that our suspicions are valid. I got it right. It is staged. We want to know our beliefs are correct. Whether they are or not, we just want someone to tell them they are. People will disguise themselves as ministers for the good. They'll proclaim that they're fighting against darkness, saving the world from tyranny and lies. But the demonic will almost always manifest as something the human heart finds appealing or reaffirming. 1 Corinthians 11. For such men are false apostles, deceitful workmen, disguising themselves as the apostles of Christ. And no wonder even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light, false light. So it's no surprise if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. Their end will correspond to their deeds. So when we experience this fear or confusion or joy because someone has saying what we hear out there, what we experience in the world, the first thing you need to do is examine ourselves. The apostle to the Gentiles encouraged this very directly when he wrote to the Corinthian Christians. He said, examine yourselves to see whether you're in the faith. Test yourselves. That's a healthy process. All right, so the idea, let's talk about it for a second. Let's set it up a little bit, because I don't want to leave the people hanging too much, because I brought up surveillance capitalism there, where you're the product. You're the product. You have to be very aware of that when you're clicking around on your phone, because surveillance capitalism means that this product that we're all using is serving us things that cause us to react emotionally. Whether you know what's happening to you or not, whether you have the YouTube app or not, it's still doing it to you. So highlight a couple things there that you've got.
Well, yeah, something we're going to get into is we're going to talk about like society's vulnerabilities as far as being subjected to Marxist critical theory and how that's playing out in our culture right now. So if you think about negative thinking, repression and trauma, repressive tolerance, liberating tolerance, these are a few of the key terms that you're going to come away hopefully having some useful knowledge of and a handle on, so that you can see these things playing out in real time and understand how people are being manipulated by this. We really are in the midst of a fifth generation warfare that is going on, and it is a divide and conquer tactic. We're aware of this, but actually like getting into some of the roots of this and how it's been infiltrated into the education system. For example, Herbert Marcuse from the Frankfurt School integrated Freud's concept of repression with Marxian cultural theory to create a framework for changing societal structures and norms. This dialectical weapon of revolution reframes tolerance as intolerance, undermining social cohesion and Christian moral foundations. So we're going to talk about this. We're going to go step by step and let you know like how this is playing out in real time and how repressive tolerance is all about. So Marcuse argues that tolerance in modern society serves to maintain status quo, allowing traditional values to persist unchallenged. So to counter this, Marcuse advocates for liberating tolerance, which involves actively opposing ideas and values that perpetuate societal repression, particularly those aligned with traditional and Christian values. So what we're seeing right now, like even the fact that there's all this, like what I said earlier, like it's almost as if YouTube is suddenly okay with everybody saying all these crazy and wild and outlandish things. Well, that's for a reason. That's because they're sowing chaos. They are chaos agents. And this whole situation just gives more credence to undermine social cohesion and attacking reality itself. Why? Because they want to create their new reality. So it's a part of the deconstruction of the old world, if you will. So this is about getting a handle on that, being able to recognize, and we've said before that they operate with the same vocabulary, but they have a different dictionary. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to try to teach you guys a little bit about how they're going about this and how to recognize the rhetoric, and so that you can reach your loved ones and also not just be so bamboozled by it and perplexed by it, because we need to be super wise. And I think that I praise God because the Lord seems to have given us a good bit of information together here, has blessed us to bring this information together for you guys. Yeah, great opportunity to share it with you. So that's what it's going to be about when we do it on the next show. That's good.
And we'll also deal with, if you've got somebody in your family or your friends who has fallen into the Marxist ideology, and after watching that go down yesterday, it really made me think that there are people out there who are going to
between my friend and I.
Yeah, people are going to need some help, some support, and how to respond to that, because you don't want to use the same tactics they're using. In fact, when it's a Marxist, you want to use the same tactics you're using to try to pull somebody out of a cult. But the point is, just to finish up here, would you stake your life on what these people are telling you about whether or not this event stage or any event or whatever is going on in Washington, D.C. or in Geneva? Would you stake your life on the people who are telling you that they can see into it clearly? A Christian has three enemies, and the first one is yourself. You might be your worst enemy. Jeremiah 17:9 proves that. And I would just, last thing is, on 10 Truths channel, just, the video that we watched, I'll just point out here that one of the videos here was this one. Why does the blood spatter on Trump's face look like the CrowdStrike logo? Because that's predicting what's about to happen with the CrowdStrike server crash. So I challenge you folks, if you find this stuff interesting, I would just challenge you to seek higher knowledge. Don't rely on your own insight and understanding, because we're all fallible, and we have to take a sincere account of ourselves. And when we do that, we can ask the Lord to help us overcome these influences and opportunities to sin that are all around us. And don't forget that anecdote. Whatever's happening in the world, these sinful, any of these organizations and plans that are based in sin are not going to ultimately succeed. All right. So we'll check back with you tomorrow. Anything else, Summer?
That's a wrap.
All right, my friends, we'll see you again next time. Thank you for watching us. And if you would, hey, download that Armor of Truth mobile app. One of these days, that might be the only place you can find us. Download it. Tell people about it. Share this video, if you would. If you can support us financially, every donation or gift makes a difference. You can use the Armor of Truth mobile app Give tab, or you can visit our website, armoroftruth.net/donate, or follow the links to the description under this video.
Find us, armoroftruth.net.
With the Armor of Truth mobile app, you'll get live notifications and a direct link whenever and wherever we go live. You get exclusive content, articles, reports, and resources, Tracking Dystopia podcast, and a Bible study podcast as well. So what are you waiting for? Download the Armor of Truth mobile app today. My name is Brad, and I'm joined once again here by my talented and my precious wife, Summer. Together, we're seeking a worldview revolution through God's revelation.
Faith is resistance.
Indeed. God bless you, my friend. See you next time.
We would take humanity to new heights, to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel.
This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test.